thanks everybody for coming along this evening. You're in for a...
Obviously being in Mohill a lot at the time, you'd always see him. The latter years he'd advertise auctions for Harry McGahern, but other things as well, election of land or whatever, if there was a circus coming to town. He was one of those great characters that everyone knew by name and by nature. He was a gentle sort of a character and not too fond of work, but sure, once he went up and down the door.
Carlin was actually born in Nover in County Meath, and he moved to Ballyfarren in County Roscommon over near Kilronan, where his father was employed by the McDermott family, and his wife took an awful interest in Turlough, and he had him educated. And when he was 18 years of age, he contracted smallpox, which left him permanently blind. Mary McDermott Rowe had him apprenticed to a harp who was a relation of hers, and she maintained him during the 3 years of his study. When he reached the 21 years of age, she provided him with a harp, a horse, a guide, and sufficient money to begin his career. House visits were the usual form of socialising in those days, and O'Carolan travelled around the Connaught playing for the landed gentry, and as we know, he played in the Crofton household and in the Clements. And when Carolan was a young man, before his blindness, he met and he fell in love with a Bridget Cruse. A match could not be made because she was from a noble family. But he never ever forgot her, and he wrote planksties. And this is a word that is used today to describe O'Carolan's music. And it's
take up the frost, St. Patrick's sons brave and true, down Bob Dobson's horse cart up there above. Whatever that meant, I don't know.
We all know we're standing at the train station. Mohill and the narrow gauge is also known as the Cavan and Leitrim Railway, and foundations of the line commenced in 1885. And Leitrim Railway. For thousands of immigrants, the station house was the start of their long journey. Business and shops in the town obviously thrived from the railway because you had all the delivering of goods. Coal was brought directly from the Arigna mines during and after the war to Drummit and brought all over the country. And of course there was many setbacks over the years. You had things like donkeys wandering onto the tracks, engines being derailed, and the railway of course played an important part in the political scene from 1916 onwards. The crew often enjoyed the patriotic act of carrying the national flag at the front of the train. The company even received a permission to run a 12th of July Orange Man special in 1918, and the abortive attempt was made to derail the trains near Garradice in Ballinamore. In the 1920s, the Leitrim men of the Irish Republican army, they kept a careful eye on His Majesty's mail. They used to examine the mail bags in Derreen, one of the stations up the road. The Cavan and Leitrim men were very loyal to the Irish men, and when the black and tans got on the train, the engine men got off, refusing to go any further. They were given immediate dismissal and often went out without work for months because of it.
As I strolled from my cottage one morning, just wondering what I should do, with bars, with bogies and shovels, a few men appeared in my view. A ganger stood up in the forefront and quickly wrote down on a page. He was counting the rails and the sleepers, where they're lifting the old narrow gauge, narrow gauge. They're lifting the old narrow gauge. From Balturbet to Adoon they have lifted that one faithful friend of us all. For the 8:30 whistle in the morning, to the schoolhouse the children would call, while the men at their work by the wayside saw the smoke vanish out like a haze, as she roared her way out of the station, going back down the old narrow gauge, back down the old narrow gauge. 'Twasn't paying's the excuse that they're giving as the reason for closing it down. From Balturbet to Adoon they have lifted that one faithful friend of us all. To a handful of workmen in Drummond, they're not able to pay a week's wage, and that is the reason, believe me, why they're lifting the old narrow gauge, lifting the old narrow gauge. It served back through the years when we couldn't get petrol or oil for our cars, and they sunk their big ships as a blockade in the north of the Suez Canal. The making and laying of the railway has gone down on history's page. Now a whole lot of men will be jobless when they've lifted the old narrow gauge, lifted the old narrow gauge. So if you want an old coal or a sleeper, the consulting engineer is your man. But £3 a dozen you'll pay him right into the palm of his hand. The bolts and the nuts they are packing all into the old railway van, and they smile when they take your good money. 'Twill help pay the workmen on hand, pay the workmen on hand. So farewell to that one bit of comfort we've had around Garba so long. When you went to the market in Mohill, it speedily took you along. Farewell to the bridges and bankings that so often went up in a blaze. Farewell, say the gangers and milesmen, they have lifted the old narrow gauge, lifted the old narrow gauge.
Well done, Mandy.
This is the story about there was a race course in Mohill and Coolabon there. The Mohill race is held in May each year. The first race of the annual races, the Mohill Traders Plate, carried a prize of 30 sovereigns and would attract a vast concourse of people spread out across the hills of Mohill and Coolabon. From these vantage points, the spectators had a perfect view of the race course below and of the surrounding countryside, stretched as far as Lough Reynolds. On the 2nd of May 1867, a Leitrim advertiser journalist reported his contement as a prospect presents itself to the eye seldom to be seen in other parts of Ireland, yet quite unknown and less appreciated. Now, I have to give it a go. You bards and muses who never refuses, I hope your talent with me you share, while I endeavour with ardent labour to sound the praises of the young grey mare. She first was taken to the Mohill races, there was entered for the first prize, where gallant sportsmen from every quarter gave down their names to be advertised. 11 o'clock was the hour precisely at which the horses were set to run. They then were called to the place of starting, and off they went as the bell was rung. Off they started, but quickly parted. Like the Star of Egypt, she led them on. But on their return there was cause to mourn, for out of 5 there came in but one. At their conversation I grew impatient to see one heat of the race put in. But in speaking fairly I grew unnerved when I saw Paul Davis down from Elfin. He was rejected in currer races for lifting prizes everywhere, but now his credit is forever broken since he came in contact with the young grey mare. He was rejected in the currer races. 'Twas said by magic that his horse could fly. They told me plainly I should not enter, for no horse in Europe could pass him by. In 12 months after he went to London and won prizes of £1,000. So Paul Davis never met his master till he came on the Mohill grounds.
The Commission in Dublin provided the funds to build it, and it cost £6,700. The Board of Guardians of Mohill Union was made up of local worthies, clergy, well-off townspeople and landlords. Lord Leitrim was the chairperson. It was built to contain 700 inmates and to alleviate the poverty of the 1840s. To enter the workhouse was the last and final straw for the poor peasants who had to abandon their houses and farms to get relief. On the 11th of June 1842, there were 193 paupers in the workhouse, and it cost 1 3/4 pence to keep each one for 1 week. The workhouse was ran by a master for the Board of Guardians. Everybody had to work in it, and families were separated by sex, age and physical condition, and only allowed to meet once a week for a short period. By 1847, the workhouse was overcrowded and fever was rampant, and in that year 712 paupers died, including the workhouse master Mr. Kelly, the medical officer Dr. O'Byrne and the chemist Dr. Voden. By April 1849, there were 1,421 paupers in the workhouse and 60 ill in the fever hospital and 26 receiving relief at the soup kitchen. By March 1850, there were 1,621 in it. So if you were in the workhouse in 1847, this was your diet as an adult. For breakfast, you got 9 ounces of oatmeal made into stirabout and 2/3 a pint of buttermilk. For your dinner, you got 3 ounces of rice. If you were a child aged 9 to 15, you got 7 ounces of oatmeal and 2/3 a pint of buttermilk for your breakfast and 2.5 ounces of rice. If you were a child over 2 and under 9, you got 4.5 ounces of oatmeal and 1/2 a pint of buttermilk for your breakfast and 1/2 a pound of bread for your dinner. Between 1846 and 1850, 1,960 paupers died in the workhouse and are buried in Bully's Acre. The workhouse closed in 1922. By a lady called Bridget McLean. So,
well, we don't know much about Bridget McLean apart from the fact that she submitted a lot of work to the newspaper, so mostly to the Leitrim Observer, and a lot of it revolved around the workhouse itself, a lot of religious poems as well. So McLean isn't a name that you'd hear too often around here. So and I'm trying to look to see families. There were some McLeans out Clune direction, so whether she came from there in Carrigallen perhaps as well. But she was Bridget McLean, and this was one of the poems she wrote about the workhouse from here.
So it's called Mohill Workhouse Chapel, 1921. Little chapel in the workhouse, how sweet you looked that morn, with sweetness like to Bethlehem, where the divine babe was born. For the poor resemble the shepherds on that Christmas day of old, while they fix their eyes on the little crib with faith and love untold. Little chapel in the workhouse, sweet spot of humble prayer, the infant king loves poverty, while he found a welcome there, sure first met his at his coming. From his throne of light above, 'tis the fairest of all virtues, hid in folds of holy love.
Not, but wait Donna Corrosha, a scríb Douglas de Hida. Scríb nor Politor Filla about a. Agus fi clú agus call mar fi sé ranha or an kid Uptaran na Heran. Tush go rá Sean Ahar Douglas de Hida in a Coney in Mohill ar Fa'i Wad. Fi sé mar Rachtara in English na hair ag bun an balla ní muire. Agus dúir sé bás na fogla bhí scríbte ar a lac uí. All creeds and all classes. Agus sin mar this. Just everybody get that?
Yeah!
That's the subtitles.
Go home, Maxwell. They're done.
This poem was written by Douglas Hyde, and as many of you know, Douglas Hyde became famous as the first president of Ireland, or the Free State, as some people referred to it at the time. Anyway, here goes. It's called An Dlannan or Togo May. Then Douglas the Heeja. O Hotch go Hotch is the Bram or Huel. It's the Bard Malame or War and Cleva. San Ishke Fear by Vorma Duel. It's by Vio Macree Lorma Cleva. Macus and Gerry a V Macus. Bar Aaron go Haltis Fay. V and Sonus Roam. Hollis o Us. San Dlannan or Togo May. Ba cum a lump sa farar be. Ba cum a lum an down im lawn. Marie an ia vi Marie, mar shrohan slave ag dul the fawn. Is ni rau rudder be sa down nak yenfing, dan ma wailo me. The lame of odd a war na howan, said land in our Togo me. Bak ni da vacas lemas yule, vi shed dar lum da an or. Is an of a yarking Ermachul, ach ag dul a raya, let mishnap more. The lanning should gan stad gan ski, more ruin nor curring roa me, to verfing darlum erangui, said Lan in our Togo me. Is the sad verse. Be holy at horshe lomanish, the vi me lua, lish tome mal, is emolain, an ish a brish, Shan Nart Macree is loom of all. The call me moron, the for me fist, on moron ach ni sauce away. Malain, gan Mary Shog, in St. Glan in our Togo May. Kermaga.
Think a little bit about the history of the club, and then to pay tribute to our departed friend Philip McGuinness. The park is named after him over here. Now, I'd have to say first of all that the GA is probably the greatest sporting voluntary organisation, and it was founded in Thurles in 1884, and the first club in Ireland, Mohill, or in Leitrim, was the Mohill Club, which was established in 1889. The GA in Leitrim began in our town here, and we formed our first club. And we were called at that time, and I'll ask you to note the words because they come into the refrain of the poem, the Mohill Fága Ballads, which means leave the way, but it probably means we're going to burst through you. And that was the way it was established. The first final was played in 1890. Mohill and Ballinamore was played down in Keshcarrigan, and Mohill had the honour of being the first club in Leitrim to win a county senior final. Now I'm only going to tell you about the next one, and it was in 1891. And then this time it ended up with Mohill Fága Ballads versus Eshlin Sarsfields. And it was played out here in a field out the road in Drumard. And the first day was played in 1891. The game lasted 23 minutes. And after 23 minutes there was a bit of a fracas, and the referee decided that he was going to abandon the game. He abandoned the game with Estlin leading by 2 points to 1. So they decided that they'd have to finish out this game, and they got together and decided that they'd play the replay for the rest of the game as far away from the ball as possible. And they decided to travel up to Kilmore in Roscommon to play the final. So on that day, fateful day, the two teams travelled up to Kilmore and joined up someplace around past Drumsna someplace, and they travelled together up there, and the supporters mingled and mixed and so on. And the game began, and it began on the 23rd minute. So what was already played started terrible. And Estlin were leading by 2 points to 1 when they arrived. So that's how they played the game. But the game ended as 2 points apiece, 2 points each, and it had to go to extra time. And Estlin, I find it hard to say this, Estlin won the game in extra time. The club has had many glorious days, great days, but we had one very, very sad day, and that was the day that we lost Philly McGinnis. Now, Philly was a great lad. He came from fantastic football stock. Now, his great-granduncle, a man named John McGinnis, a school teacher, was captain of the first Mohill team in 1890 to win the county final. And his father, Michael, was a brilliant footballer. He was a very gifted fella, but he was most gifted as a footballer. And at the end of the last century, a team was picked called the Team of the Century, the Leitrim Team of the Century, and Michael was selected as the full forward of the Team of the Century. But in addition to that, he met his lovely wife Phil, and together they produced 3 fantastic footballers for the Mohill club. Absolutely brilliant players. Now, anyone who knows the game will tell you that there was no cornerback in living memory who was nearly half as good as Michael McGinnis. And Philly hadn't even reached his prime when he was taken from us. Now, to describe Philly as a great footballer is no exaggeration. He was acknowledged as the best footballer in Leitrim at that particular time. I never did anything like that before, so this is what I come up with. The brilliant young footballer hadn't reached his prime when the Lord in his wisdom early called time. We mourn his departure, we're sad and we sigh, but we signed up to play for the All-Stars on high. Philip McGinnis was the young superhero's name. Philly was a giant of Mohill and Leitrim county fame. Oh Lord, what a terrible trauma and sinful shame that he shall no longer grace his beloved GAA game. Fágan sin a fear an tí, fága bailach le Philly. Glas agus bán ag séadas a gui, fága bailach le Philly. We visualize Philly still jumping on high, plucking the ball from the bright blue sky. No, sorry, I haven't noticed. Great excitement and anticipation grabbed the masses as he leaves floundering in his wake the marker he passes. Onward he goes, onward he runs, his lungs a smith's bellow, soloing, weaving, deceiving, dummying breathless fellows. McGinnis shoots and the green flag is raised on high, and our superhero turns to cheering and punches the sky, smiling punches the sky. To his teammates, Philly was a priceless treasure. His value to the team impossible to measure. A golden role model with boundless energy and skill. The young boys all loved him, and indeed all was well. But, regrettably and sadly, he has gone to his reward. It remains to the annals his greatness to record. Our faithful friend has been invited to enter God's portal, but to us in Mohill, Philly McGinnis will always be a football immortal.
Songs and ballads would have come from and were sung and passed on was at the fair. So you would have had ballad sellers and ballad singers, and we know this even from the old reports from newspapers where you had ballad singers hawking, sometimes they call it hawking ballads. You might buy one ballad sheet for a penny, and sometimes you got 6 cents for 3 pence. And they were really popular because people wanted to go home with their ballad sheet. And I think the reason behind selling them was, at one stage there was a rule brought in that you weren't allowed just to sing, you had to be selling something in order to have some kind of standing within the fair itself. So often, one person actually took to selling straws at one stage and giving the book away for free, or giving the penny ballad away for free, because again there was a little bit of trouble around seditious ballad singing, and people were fined and brought to court because they reckoned that some of these ballad singers were agitating kind of political revolt. We're going to have a song from Sarah all about Mohill Fair. This is one that I actually wrote for the penny ballad competition that John ran here a couple of years back, and I won a penny.
Well, I'm very honoured to sing Fionnuala song called Mohill Fair. As I travelled on the road to Mohill, this fair maiden I chanced to see. She stepped my body up before me, and these words she said to me: "Would you take me to the fair of Mohill, and on my purpose do not frown? What better place to make a match than at the fair in Mohill town?" Now this young girl, she was a beauty, rosy cheeks and a twinkly eyes. Her hair hung loosely o'er her shoulders, as these words I heard her cry: "Oh, won't you take me to the fair of Mohill, and at my purpose do not frown? What better place to make a match than at the fair of Mohill town?" So I helped her on the cart beside me as we went along the way. I cast my eye in her direction and prayed her purpose I could sway. "Oh, won't you take me to the fair of Mohill, and on my purpose do not frown? What better the place to make a match than at the fair of Mohill town?" Now she sang songs and I told stories, my heart expanded in my chest. But when I told her my intentions, she thought that it was all in jest. "Ah, won't you take me to the fair of Mohill, and of my purpose do not frown? What better a place to make a match than at the fair in Mohill town?" So I took her to the fair of Mohill, and I let her loose amongst the throng. She caught the eye of many a young man as they watched her trip along. "Ah, won't you take me to the fair of Mohill, and on my purpose do not frown? What better place to make a match than at the fair of Mohill town?" So come on, you young men of notions, don't show your cards too hastily, or you might end up broken-hearted and left lamenting just like me. "Ah, won't you take me to the fair of Mohill, and on my purpose do not frown? What better place to make a match than at the fair of Mohill town?"
You know, I know you're all tired at this stage, but you're all probably familiar with this instrument, but for those of you who are not, these are called the uilleann pipes. I suppose they're the most complicated of, there's bagpipes from all over the world, from the most famous would be from Scotland, but from North Africa, Tunisia, all over the place, Italy as well, France. But these are kind of the most complicated, and they're different in that you don't blow into them. So as you know, I'm red in the face from embarrassment, not from blowing in. But you have 7 reeds, so you basically have 3 different pipes here called regulators that you play chords on. You have the main pipe here, which is called the chanter, and that plays the tune or the melody. And then you have these 3 pipes here that just play one single note each. So, so just to demonstrate, to play the tune is obviously. That's your melody. Then the drones are just one single note. You literally turn them on and turn them off. There's just a switch here that you flick them on. They're just like like turning on a light. There's nothing to them at all. You just blow air through them, and then you play chords with the regulators. So this allows you then to, in slow tunes, you can take your hand off and play accompaniment, and then other times you can beat out different rhythms on them. But one of the most famous pipers of all time, definitely of the 20th century, was a man called Johnny Dorn. He was a traveller man from based in Rathnew in Wicklow, where he was born in 1908. But he was famous for basically travelling every single county in Ireland, and he was an absolutely phenomenal musician. Like they talk about Michael Coleman among fiddle players. He was basically the Michael Coleman of the pipes. He was just in a different league. About 2 weeks before his accident, he told his friend John Kelly, the fiddle player, he said, "I don't feel well." He said, "I have a pain in my heart." He said, "If there's something I don't feel right." And John Kelly thought to himself, "Oh my God, if this musician is not recorded, this would be a travesty." So he rang up his friend Cuivin O'Donoghue in the Folklore Commission. He said, "You have to record this fella right now." He said, "I'm bringing out to you tonight." And the two of them headed out to the Folklore Commission, and they made one set of recordings. It's available on the internet. It's called A Bunch of Keys. And Johnny Dorn's music hopefully will last forever. It's just absolutely stunning music. So that's the connection with Mohill anyway, and that's a brief history of the pipes. So, one very quick tune. I'll play a tune that Johnny Dorn played called Coppers and Brass.
Chapel by McCarthy. He was a native of Mohill and he wrote a lot of songs, and I think he was the same. Okay. Attend ye Roman Catholics unto those lines penned down concerning this grand chapel now that's built in Mohill town. It has grown up so rapidly and towering to the sky in honour of Almighty God, the Lord that rules on high. From Creve and Gortletra quarry, the stones came large and small. Also from the old chapel to rise the holy walls. God bless our noble parish priest, brave Canon Donoghue, who from the first to the last the building carried through. The interior of the chapel is beautiful and grand. Its pillars and its altars for centuries will stand. Besides that well suspended bell, its loud and silvery sound, to call the people all to pray for a full 5 miles around. Father Allen and Father McGahern, great praise is also due, who assisted in the pious work with Canon Donoghue. The roofing too is beautiful. Remark it as you pass. Also its granite sashes and its splendidly stained glass. God bless the parishioners all around, and long then may they live. For one and all, both great and small, most cheerfully they give. For all that has contributed, both husband, child, and wife, their names will be recorded in the angel book of life. Every time a priest of God, a mass inside will say, will always send for their poor souls while mouldering in the clay.
Very good.
He's not anti-jazz, yes. So we're delighted to have him play a bit of jazz for us, and we'll hear a little bit about the anti-jazz campaign as well from MA too.
In days gone by, the people came out and held non-state national meetings to remedy the abuses of landlordisms and other national evils. And it is up to the people today who are interested in the life of the nation to rise up and make strong public protests in the form of public meetings all over the country in an effort to save the life of the nation confronted with this pagan jazz menace. Meetings should be held in every county to arouse the people to a sense of the danger, morally and nationally, of this evil. Jazz was borrowed from Africa by the anti-God society with the object of destroying morals and religion. The dance and the music with its abominable rhythm, extreme use of syncopation, and its copulative beat was borrowed from Central Africa by a gang of wealthy Bolsheviks. The aim being to strike at Christian civilization throughout the world. They have employed mass suggestion. In the music, they know they had something which would make an appeal to debase sexual instinct by superlative syncopation allied with a copulative beat of the drum. They stirred up forces all over the world. Mere condemnation of jazz is worse than useless. Modern foreign dances are bringing disgrace and ruin on our land. Halls are open all night and often licenses for very intoxicating liquor are attached. And these dances, as carried on in Ireland, are a national disgrace. We consider as a national scandal the all-night jazz dances and amusements that are being held throughout Ireland, and also the programmes that are being broadcasted on the wireless from our Irish stations. The Irish people do not realise the terrible dangers of jazz morally and nationally. It may be necessary to break the windows of all the halls and places where jazz dances are held. All Irishmen, no matter what their political convictions, whether they are black shirts or blue shirts or have no shirts at all, should join hands and help Father Conifrey sweep the serpent jazz as St. Patrick swept the serpents of paganism from our land. Young folk will dance, but let them dance to rhythms of beauty and in a manner which will scatter morbidity and make for fun and jollity. Thank you.
John McGahern. He's like this pub here we're standing outside was one of his favourite pubs, and in fact my father, who's the local vet, lived down there. Himself and John McGahern were quite friendly, and my first memory of John McGahern was going out on a call with Pat, my father, out testing cattle. Now the job when Dad call you get into the car and you wouldn't know where you're going, and you wouldn't know where you're going to end up. But I ended up out there, out at his house there, overlooking Laura Lake. Got to the house, and Dad and John McGahern were talking. I was looking to see where the cattle were. No sign of cattle. So I said, "Where's the cattle?" And John just said, "Over there." So I had to go and get all the cattle. I got them round anyway into the gate, and Dad and John were there. And this dog arrived out of nowhere. And as soon as the cattle saw the dog, they were gone again. So I had a very early introduction to how to hate someone. And I hated John McGahern and his dog that day. But he's probably best known for his novels and his plays, but he also was very prolific with his essays. So I'm just going to read out a little bit about what his thoughts of Mohill. He was, as you know, he was from down there at Laura Lake, but his local pubs down there would be in Fionnuala, but he used to come into Mohill quite often as well. And he describes it here himself. This is from Love of the World, his essays, collection of essays. Mohill is our town. In its plain way, I think it beautiful. There is no desolate big street. The simple streets link perfectly into one another. A stark Catholic church on the hill dominates the town. The little Protestant church is hidden away in its graveyard garden at the bottom. Mohill is about as far south as the Ulster plantation reached, and here Protestants can be found making a living on small holdings as poor as those belonging to their Catholic neighbours. I like the town best in winter, the outskirts glistening with frost, the excitement on the faces of people in from the countryside for the late Saturday night shopping, children and parcels being dragged about under the street lamps. When the shopping is done, they go into the bars to meet the people they know and to discover the news. Each locality to its own bar. In early March, on a Thursday market day, once I see the bags of seed potatoes and bundles of cabbage plants, early York and flat Dutch, greyhound and curly, on the corner outside Luke Airley's. Each bundle tied with baler twine of all colours. I know the winter is almost over. I think of Mohill as one of the happiest towns in the world. That's it.
Well, that he was so well known for was Gloom Cayley Band, and P. Fitzpatrick, who was the original owner of Fitzpatrick's here, was a great fiddle player and a member of the Gloom Cayley Band, and a number of other people involved as well with them. And they were recorded. That's the reason why they were recorded. Father Conifrey kind of pushed that they had a recording of them, and actually I think that recording is to be found online as well. But what we really wanted to mention as well here, and the words of singing over the years, one of the best and one of the most amazing voices for me, and she's still a wonderful lady, is that of May Reynolds Malone, and she sings a lovely song called Sweet Mohill for Me, which was written by a P. Meehan, but I'm not sure whether this was Meehan from up here or if anybody has any idea. But again, it was a song that it was submitted again to the papers, to a couple of papers, but May actually sung it as well and put the air to it. So we're going to listen to him, and I think it's an amazing way to find out about a town is, you know, through its characters and through its songs and its stories and its poetry, because it just gives you a totally different outlook. Instead of them speeding past, you know, I wouldn't be speeding past like that. I'd be looking out to remember all these people and all these things. So this is May, the lovely May Malone, singing Sweet Mohill for Me.
Till from I've travelled far side its valley the deep and its great mountain high. No spot in that county my longings could win, like the fair town of Mohill on the shores of Loughrinn. I have travelled indeed through the great Carrick-town, on the banks of the Shannon, the stream of renown, through old Ballamore and through Floon I did march, from Snan through Leitrim and Jamestown downwards. I have travelled from Shambo, from Kieran so near, where a battle was fought in the year 98. Manor Hamilton too, from a hair I did see, but none like sweet Mohill for me.
So we're going to walk and let her keep singing.